Ever wondered why your cakes don't turn out as fluffy and moist as you'd like? Well, the secret behind perfect cakes often lies in understanding the science behind baking. Yes, you heard it right, the science. Baking, you see, is as much a science as it is an art. It's a delicate dance of chemistry and creativity, each playing off the other to create something truly delightful. To create a cake that's a masterpiece, you need to understand what each ingredient brings to the table. Let's start with flour. Flour isn't just the bulk of your cake, it's the backbone. It provides the structure, the scaffolding, if you will, that holds everything together. Next up is sugar. Now, sugar isn't just there to make your cake sweet, it also adds moisture. That's right, sugar helps to lock in moisture, keeping your cake tender and moist. Then we have eggs. Eggs are the glue that binds everything together. They help to emulsify the batter, creating a smooth and uniform texture. And let's not forget, eggs also contribute to the leavening process, helping your cake to rise beautifully. Last but not least, we have fat. Fat, in the form of butter or oil, is what gives your cake its tenderness. It shortens the gluten strands in the flour, making your cake soft and crumbly. Plus, fat carries flavor, so it's a key player in ensuring your cake tastes as good as it looks. Understanding the role of each ingredient is like having a roadmap to perfection. Each ingredient in its own way contributes to the final outcome. So, the next time you bake a cake, remember it's not just about mixing things together, it's about understanding how each component works. Remember, each ingredient has a specific role to play. Now let's move on to the next crucial aspect, the mixing process. Have you ever given thought to how you mix your cake batter? It might seem like a simple task, just throwing everything in a bowl and giving it a stir, but in reality, the mixing process is one of the most crucial steps in baking. It's a delicate dance that, when done right, can lead to a perfectly fluffy and moist cake. Let's start with the creaming method. This method involves beating butter and sugar together until it's pale and fluffy. The process of creaming creates tiny air pockets in the butter, which later expand in the oven, giving your cake that desirable light texture. It's like a mini science experiment happening right there in your mixing bowl. Now let's move on to the all-in-one method. This is where all ingredients are added into the bowl at once and mixed together. Sounds simple, right? This method can be a real time saver and is great for denser cakes like pound cakes or carrot cakes. But remember, every cake has its own personality. What works for one may not work for another. And this brings us to a very important point, overmixing and undermixing. These are two extremes that can make or break your cake. Overmixing can result in a cake that's tough and dense rather than light and fluffy. This happens because overmixing develops the gluten in the flour, which is great for bread, but not so great for cakes. On the other hand, undermixing can give you a cake with an uneven texture. It might be too crumbly, or you might find pockets of dry flour in your finished cake. So how do you know when you've mixed just enough? Look for a batter that's smooth and well combined, but not overbeaten. So remember, mixing is an art. Treat it with the respect it deserves. Next time you're in the kitchen, give a little extra thought to how you're combining your ingredients. It could be the secret to taking your cakes from good to great. How much attention do you pay to your oven's temperature? If your answer is not much, then let's change that today. Because when it comes to baking, heat plays a pivotal role, one that's as important as the ingredients you're using or the recipe you're following. In fact, a misstep in temperature control can drastically alter the end result of your baked goods. Think of heat as the invisible hand that guides the transformation of your batter into a cake. It's the force that causes your cake to rise, setting the structure and helping it achieve that perfect golden brown crust. But here's the catch. Too much or too little of this force can lead to baking disasters. Let's consider a scenario where the oven's temperature is set too high. In this case, your cake may rise too quickly. This rapid rise can create large air pockets, leading to an uneven texture, and once the cake has risen too far, too fast, it can collapse under its own weight, resulting in a deflated, sad-looking cake. On the other hand, if the temperature is set too low, the cake batter can take too long to set. The result, a dense, heavy cake that's far from the light, fluffy delight you were aiming for. It might also lead to an undercooked center, which is a clear no-no in baking. So how can we avoid these temperature-related pitfalls? First, the importance of preheating your oven cannot be overstated. This ensures that your cake starts baking as soon as it hits the oven, preventing any unwanted texture changes. Second, using an oven thermometer can be a game changer. It offers an accurate reading of the temperature inside your oven, making sure you're baking at the exact temperature your recipe calls for. So next time you're ready to bake, remember to give your oven's temperature the attention it deserves. It's not just about following the recipe to the letter, it's also about understanding and respecting the role of heat in baking. Remember, temperature control is key. Treat your oven with care. Do you often find yourself making the same baking mistakes? Let's delve into some of the common culprits that might be compromising your cake perfection. Starting with the unsung hero of the baking world, baking powder. A common oversight is using expired baking powder. It might seem harmless, but if your baking powder has lost its oomph, your cakes will too. Always check the expiration date, and when in doubt, test it. Stir half a teaspoon into a small amount of hot water. If it bubbles up energetically, it's good to go. Next, let's talk about the importance of following the recipe to a T. We all have that adventurous streak, the urge to make a recipe our own. But baking is a science. It's not the time for improvisation. Each ingredient plays a crucial role. Too much sugar can make your cake too sweet and cause it to brown too quickly. Too little flour and your cake might not hold its shape. Follow the recipe exactly, especially if you're trying it for the first time. And then there's the matter of cooling. It's tempting, isn't it? That lovely warm cake just out of the oven begging to be frosted. But patience, my friend, is a baker's virtue. Frosting a warm cake will only lead to a melty, messy disaster. Always allow your cake to cool completely before applying the frosting. It may test your patience, but it's worth the wait. These are just a few of the common mistakes that might be standing between you and your perfect cake. Remember, baking is a journey, not a destination. There will be bumps in the road, but with every mistake comes a chance to learn. So keep your baking powder fresh, follow your recipes, and let those cakes cool. Avoid these blunders and you're on your way to baking the perfect cake. Let's quickly recap what we have learned today. In the quest for the perfect cake, each ingredient plays a pivotal role. Flour for structure, sugar for sweetness and moisture, butter for flavor and texture, eggs for stability, and baking powder for rise. Never underestimate the importance of these humble ingredients. Equally significant is the art of combining these components. Careful mixing ensures a light, fluffy result, while overmixing can lead to a dense, heavy cake. Remember, patience is key here. Temperature control is another vital element in baking. A consistent, appropriate heat allows your cake to rise evenly and cook thoroughly. Too hot or too cold, and your cake could end up undercooked or dry. And finally, avoid common baking pitfalls. From incorrect measurements to oven crowding, these seemingly small errors can have a big impact on your final product. With these tips in mind, you're all set to bake the perfect cake. Happy baking!